So hello everybody. As you know, I'm Kati Clements, and today we have a very special guest. As every single time, of course, our guests are all special. But I would like to introduce to you Jan Pawlowski from Ruhr West Hochschule, which is a German word that I can't really pronounce, but still, can you first introduce yourself and maybe your connection to learning technologies a little bit, so our audience hears who you are a little bit.
I come from Ruhr West University of Applied Sciences. I work here for the past 5 years, and before I used to work at the University of Jyväskylä in Finland. So I'm professor for business information systems, and I've been working with learning technologies for quite a while. Let's say for about 20 years. I've been focusing on, for example, developing open educational solutions, open educational resources. I've been working in quite big European projects aiming at different target groups, for example, for the school sector, for example, but also for the uh, university and industry sector. Um, Currently, I'm also working quite a lot in this issue of digital transformation. So we are working with a lot of companies, supporting them to make the step towards digital solutions, digital business models, digital products and services in a way. So, well, that's my relation to learning technologies. And well, I guess I'll talk about that a little bit more when Cathy asks me for it.
Yeah, okay. So I asked you here because of a joint project that we both have got, who you had the idea for, and this project is called Computational Thinking and Acting. And it is dealing with the school sector, which is also LEA's target group or stakeholder group, and that I thought that it would be interesting also for our audience. By the way, if you have some questions for Jan, you can ask them in the chat box below, or you can ask them later on um, as well during this webinar. But so I wanted you to talk a little about how did you come up with this idea for this project, computational thinking and acting. How did you run into this issue? So can you tell your story a little bit?
Of course, I can do that. I basically realize in every area of work how important it is to understand how computers work, how computers can solve problems in business, but also in everyday life. Um, so there is a main question: when should we actually start teaching this? And what we do here at Ruhr West University, we work with a lot of schools. We have a STEM center here, which basically deals with both teacher education regarding new technologies, but also working with pupils starting from grade 9. And from my point of view, this is too late. So we started working with primary schools. Um, well, as one sentence, besides the professional life, I have a daughter who is now 10 years old, born in Finland, and I worked with her primary school as well. And well, there was a problem that the teachers, they didn't have a clue how to work with computers, how to introduce digital technologies to their everyday teaching. So so we realized the importance that we really start early, because when you started at grade 9, you have one big problem. You mainly get the nerds to work with computers, and in particular, the male nerds. There is a certain age where actually there is this typical prejudice, at least in Germany, I guess in Finland it's different, that, well, computers are not for girls. And this happens quite early, usually in grade 5, 6, 7. So we decided to start earlier, and we think it's important to start really from the first grade. And this was the main motivation for us. So both for the university, that we extend our activities towards primary schools, um, well, and secondly, to really do something for, well, all kids, that they can get an orientation what they will need in their professional life 10, 15 years later.
Yeah, and what was very interesting to me was the kind of problem-solving skills of the German primary schools, that they had actually asked the parents to step in when there was not enough competencies for teachers to be teaching these things. So that was quite outside the box thinking. At least I have not heard that there has been this kind of activities in Finland. Um, but I suppose parents are coaching football and swimming and so on. So why not ask them to coach on computers as well? So I think that this was a kind of nice way to solve some of the some of the problems of the lack of skills for computers. But what is computational thinking actually? How do we define that? And I would also like you to talk about another concept, which is physical computing, because it's kind of concretely related to this one. And I think that our audience is not so familiar what concretely computational thinking could be, in what kind of activities there could be, for example, and what are we actually talking about when we're talking about these physical.
Okay. Well, there are a lot of definitions when you read the literature. Um, to say it in a quite easy way, computational thinking just means how ICT solves real world problems. So understanding how a computer works, and understanding how you can make a computer work for you. That's the simple definitions. It's not the same like programming. So teaching coding might be useful, but there are more competencies connected to computational thinking, which you can need for all kind of problem solving. Typical competencies, for example, concern abstraction and decomposition. So can you actually, when you have one problem solution, can you actually apply this problem solution also to other problems? That's the abstraction part. But also decomposition, if you have a big problem, a big task to solve, can you divide it into smaller pieces, into smaller parts, and you would solve each problem and connect the different small, tinier solutions later on. Also, typical stuff like pattern recognition, right? You need that for using computers, but you also need that, for example, in music. So understanding what the theme of an opera is, for example, or in arts, understanding the key patterns which you see in a certain period of arts, for example, what are the patterns the impressionists are using. So these are very generic competencies, and it's necessary to transfer them to let the computer do that for you. So that's just the very simple explanation of computational thinking. Then there is the second part, physical computing. So let me start again with the motivation of this project. Um, what computer teaching is usually about is sitting in a room and typing on the keyboard. So it's not considered to be a very active activity. Um, Also, the typical programmer is seen or perceived as someone who sits in a dark room and works 24 hours not communicating to people. This is not what I want. I want to get children really moving. And what we want to do with the idea of physical computing is that pupils experience certain types of problems in real life. In real life, moving somewhere, experiencing, touching, sensing the problem. So we want them to experience the problems in the real world first, and then transferring this problem to the computer and solving a certain problem with a computer. Physical computing also means that the solutions shouldn't only be on the screen so that people stare at the screen and see something. We want the solutions to be physical. For example, it's quite popular at the moment to use different types of educational robots, and you can when you program something, when you steer them, when you control them, you can actually touch them, see them moving, and you really have a haptic experience, for example. So these are the two directions of physical computing. First of all, transferring a problem which you experience in the real world. In the ideal case, you also move and you might have some physical activities with it. And secondly, the output, where you actually can touch, feel, hear things which that you see, okay, your solution is really something which shows up in the real world. That's the idea.
Okay. I think that's a very good explanation for it. So something that you can touch and understand the computer's let's say what is happening inside the computer a little bit better. Um, I was recently in this kind of researchers' night where there was a lot of robots and kids playing with them, and it was remarkable to see the kind of motivation and enthusiasm that they have got for all these different physical activities, whereas they can be quite bored and kind of passive in the classroom and kind of not interested in the topic. So I think that definitely this is an area of teaching which will have a large impact in the future. Um, I wanted to know, do you have some examples or maybe some links for some videos if our audience wanted to have a look later on or so, maybe to have a better understanding on what we are talking about. Maybe you can
Yes, of
share
course,
those later.
share those later. But I can also give you some examples what I actually mean. So there are many good programming online activities. So for example, I'll post it in the chat. One activity by the big American players like um, Microsoft, for example, Facebook. Um, you can actually learn basic coding concepts and also computational thinking concepts using this code.org, for example. But it's an activity which is only at the screen. Um, one key or one typical activity is for children how to control and how to steer a robot or an avatar in a certain environment. So how can you move? I think in this code.org It's an angry bird, so the Finnish one, which you move through a labyrinth, and you can use basically arrows which let the bird move upwards, downwards, right and left, and then you see it moving on the screen. So we did it a little bit differently with a tiny robot, which is called Bebot. It's one which you, or if you have seen the announcement on Facebook, it's this little bee uh, robot which you can steer through arrows on the top of the robot. So yeah, it's the guy on the right side, and you can see arrows. So what you can actually do with it is you can move it incrementally. So uh, you can steer it, let's say 3 times, go 3 times forward, then turn to the right, then go again forward, and then you push go, and the bee moves. So that's a typical physical activity. But what we did in the first grade already with the pupils was we took them out to the yard of the school, and we asked them to steer each other, giving them only arrows, and they would move through the different parts of the school, steering each other. So that was the first part, when we said, okay, steer your partner, let's say, to the swing, and they move 10 meters forward, a couple of meters to the right, one step with each arrow. So they experienced what you can actually do in the real world, and they were moving. They were doing that quicker and quicker. They were running and having fun outside. And then we moved to the classroom, and we got a kind of playing field with 7 times 7 fields, because this Bebot moves 15 centimeters at each time. And they would develop the steering for the little Bebot first, first of all on paper. So they were thinking, okay, how how should the Bebot move? And they developed a solution for it. And then they were basically typing it to the top of the Bebot. They were trying out whether their solution works. So they actually could see how their solution works, and they could touch the Bebot and feel the Bebot, how it moves across this little this little field. So it was basically an outdoor activity combined with a classroom activity. Nothing to do with computers yet, but a lot to do with computational thinking, and a lot to do with physical computing. And what we did in next steps was not only letting it move across this field, but combining it with some uh, simple tasks of geography. So we had a map of the world in on the field, and it had coordinates in it. So first of all, they could learn about coordinates, which they need to read a map, for example, but which they also need when they uh, do graphics, and when they manipulate photos, for example. So typical things you need for using computers. And then they got tasks, okay, move the Bebot from the southern tip of South America to the most western part of Asia. And they had to look up, okay, where is this on the map, and how can we move tiny Bebot around there? And then Bebot traveled around the world. So it was really a fun activity, and it just shows, okay, don't do only computer activities, but connect it with other subjects and try to think, where do you need these competencies, not only in a computer science course, but where you could use those competencies in all types of different subjects. And they had lots of fun. So I can share some pictures later on, um, they were moving with a Bebot, they were moving around the world, and it was just great.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think that definitely this discussion we have been having in the LEA consortium meetings, and also with our extended network, that we really need support not only for like STEM topics, but also for like music, for arts, and so on. And so we have to see where in the curricula could we utilize this kind of activities. So that brings me to my next question, which is that what is this project doing? What is computational thinking and acting project doing? What could we expect? What kind of outcomes will it have?
So first of all, we are looking at new types of curricula and how we can embed computational thinking in existing curricula. So we don't want to build a new computer science curriculum only. I mean, there are very good examples for that. That's of course in Finland, but also in Switzerland and in the UK, for example. But we would like to build a new competency framework for computational thinking. That's the first part. And we want to provide guidelines how to include it into existing curricula. We know we have a small project, and we will not change a nation's or a region's curriculum in 3 years, so that's not possible. But we can give examples how to include these activities in existing curricula, in particular in different types of subjects. That's the first part, the curriculum part. Then the next part is obviously we want to develop open learning scenarios. So we want to have ready-made descriptions for teachers. Um, how can they use it? Uh, so it should be detailed descriptions of learning activities, and we will describe it for different subjects. For example, again for music or for geography or for different types of subjects. So each of those learning scenarios will basically consist of a real world problem. So we give some advice how to experience a certain problem in the real world, and then how to do a computer activity solving this real world problem on the computer. So each scenario will embed this physical computing approach, real world combined with computer activities. So these are the key outcomes. And of course, we will gain plenty of experiences. We will run different validations in the participating countries, so in Finland, Estonia, Germany, and Greece. And we will try the stuff out with teachers and teacher trainers, and also, of course, with the kids. So we'll gain lots of experience, and we'll also learn from that and provide good practices afterwards.
So this sounds good. So basically these scenarios will be open, so any teacher can take up on them and
Yes,
use them in their
that's the idea.
classroom.
We believe in open educational resources and practices, so we will share all those materials in different portals. So we'll go where the teachers are and make them available for free. So they will not only be freely accessible, but they will be reusable. So each teacher can just take such a scenario, modify it, change it, and also, of course, give it back to the community. So that's basically our idea. We want to have the broadest distribution we can achieve, hopefully.
Okay, that really concludes questions I had for you for today, but what about our audience? Was this introduction to computational thinking understandable for you? Did you get any questions on how to use these kind of learning scenarios, or anything you want to ask from Jan? I advise you to use the chat box, but of course you can also connect your microphone from the top um, if you like, and have a little chat with us. So how does this sound for your schools in your municipalities? Is the computational thinking happening? I can see that from the list, at least, there are some people from Italy, from Portugal. Um, are these activities already inside your curriculum? So you can have a little comment on the chat box. We would like to hear from you a little bit. Sarah says, yes, coding is a part of the curricula subject in primary schools in Italy. Do you know if it is happening on the other topics though? And are they doing some physical computing activities in there? Not common. So this could be some ideas for the Italian primary schools also to learn.
Yeah, I think this will be challenges that go into non-computer science or natural science for these concepts. In Germany, we definitely have there are not really many teachers available just because of the market. I mean, they work in IT companies, so we also have to take the teachers with us. Uh, but then, of course, there's this problem that the teachers, first of all, would hesitate and say, "Okay, well, I've never learned that." So we really have to prepare them and give them some good ideas how they can utilize and bring this computational thinking into their subjects, and that it can really have a benefit also for an arts teacher, for a sports teacher, for a music teacher. I think that's the real challenge we have all over Europe, not only in Germany.
How about in Portugal? I see that we have got at least three of our colleagues from Portugal. Do you have some idea on how computational thinking is it embedded in your curricula in or and how much of these kind of activities are already reaching the classrooms, the robots and so on? Maybe Angela or Jose Pedro or Tanya. Yes, I know you only buy things and you don't know if anybody uses things, right? Okay, that's all right. Hopefully those technologies are used. Of course, it is Leah's job to guide procurers to make better purchase decisions, so that we would not buy any technology that is left into the corner without any use. Um, One more question for Jan, which I can ask, is that what do you think about the barriers for computational thinking in schools that you have seen? I know this is one of the tasks that the project is going to explore, but is it really that the teachers don't have the courage to start trying these things, or they don't have the competencies, or is there not enough money for the equipment and so on? What do you think are the kind of main barriers. I would think also the kind of like maybe the that we need more vocabulary because of the fact that these things are of course happening, but we don't necessarily connect the different topics into computational thinking. I mean, we have been doing, for example, sewing or woodwork, where you have to have a certain kind of pace, thinking, and so on. So they, like you said, that they are very general skills, but they are not necessarily linked up.
Well, of course, there are many. There is always the infrastructure problem. I think this is mainly in primary schools. So when I look at it in Germany, we have huge infrastructure funds, but it has not arrived yet at the schools. So at the school where I was teaching, um, there, well, the school had some internet somewhere only available for teachers, but no wireless or anything available. So I had to bring my own mobile router to make that available. So I'd say, and that's common to many schools. But it's not about the infrastructure. The key issue are the teachers, and there is a question: how can we actually motivate them to change? Um, the competencies, I think it's not the problem. What we are teaching there in primary school, this is not rocket science nor magic. They will pick it up and understand it in a matter of days, I think. Um, but the problem is really the incentives. So when we have motivated teachers, I think they will understand that it's necessary to teach to the pupils what they need in maybe 5 or 10 years from now, and they will need these competencies. That's for sure. Um, so but other teachers might, of course, just say, okay, why should I change? You know, I've prepared all my classes in all subjects, so I I don't need to change. So in the long run, we will need to change curricula, and we will have to give some kind of incentives to teachers, at least their efforts should be valued by society, valued by parents, for example. Then the teachers will do that. I strongly believe in them. They want something good for the children, and that's why they will do it. We just have to support them in a way. But the key barriers are, of course, always existing structures. So even in countries which serve as good examples, like Switzerland, for example, it took 3 to 5 years to reform the curriculum, and now they have quite a good curriculum incorporating these computational competences in all across subjects, and also educating the teachers. But you know, educating a full generation of teachers, it will cost, and but we have to do it. Not us, but of course our governments will need to pay for it.
Okay, so bonus question. If I see that you're scared because I haven't told you this one, but if you had, let's say, 100,000 euros to invest for one school, how would you, what would you buy for these activities? What would you buy there in a typical school in Germany? Would you get, you said that it's important to get the teachers motivated, so should we have these kind of inspirational speakers from America to come and talk in the schools to get them excited, or how would you get the teachers actually motivated? You said that it's not about their skills, it's about their motivation more. So to solve that issue, so that we have a lot of people here who decide on money. So maybe give some tips. Should you fix the internet first, or should you fix the mind of the teacher, or or
Okay,
what?
I'm not sure in how many years I can use the 100,000. Um, well, normally it's not a problem to get the infrastructure. That's oh, sorry, that's not a big deal. Even even companies, uh, let's say hardware companies or the telecommunication companies, they will provide it for free. Well, there's no free lunch, but basically it's easy to get the infrastructure. Um, I would invest in education and motivation for the teachers, so the teachers have to experience it. And I can just recommend what we do here. We have a Fab Lab, or you might know maker spaces. Bring teachers to maker spaces where they really experience these new technologies, where they experience what does it mean for me, what does it mean for my education, what does it mean for my teaching. So the teachers have to experience it. Um, and usually teachers have these resources so that they have a couple of days in each school year where they can train or educate themselves further. So I would bring them to spaces where they can actually experience what is happening in the field of ICT and in the field of new digital technologies. That's the first thing. And they will develop also new ideas for themselves that really works very, very well. So that's the first part, providing resources or time for teachers to gain these experiences. The second part is not about infrastructures. The second part is who will take care of the infrastructure. So we see many schools equipped with new environments, but nobody nobody takes care of it when it breaks. So the systems have to be up, the internet has to be up, and there has to be someone who takes care of that. And we need that for schools, and we need the people who repair stuff within minutes, because otherwise, if it's not available one time, two times, three times, then they are not going to use it. So that's really really important that there is someone not only taking care of the lights and the toilets in school, but someone taking care continuously about the infrastructure. That's really important. It doesn't cost a lot. Technicians could be shared by a pool of schools, but they have to be available like that immediately, supporting the teachers. This is what I would invest in, but of course, then the 100,000 are spent uh, after 2 years maybe, um, and this has to be continuous investment.
Hmm. I hope that gives some ideas for some of our procurers on what to invest in. I found a picture of the
Yes, that's ours.
Fab Lab in Ruhr West. Is this correct?
Yeah, there are a lot of
That
technologies
was a
you
Google
can
search.
experience, like 3D printing. You have all types of robots. You have drones. In the back corner, we have an environment for virtual reality where you can actually paint in virtual reality. You can paint 3D structures and pictures. And well, more or less, when both teachers and pupils come there, they just have fun and they start enjoying these technologies, and they get inspired, they get new ideas. So this is what it really needs.
Yeah. So in our project, we have been in. We have a partner who is also doing an edu lab, which is this kind of living lab concept in Torino. Um, a little bit similar space where companies can also bring their products for trying out and so on. So this is it's interesting, very similar concept as well, and I think that these kind of concepts will increase in the future. I hadn't thought about the motivational value for the teachers in particular, which is a key issue in getting the technologies to actually work and to be used in the schools. So that's a good point. Um, the teachers who would get to play around a little bit more would be probably more confident
Yes, and
on trying.
it works. We also work, for example, with handicapped people. So we bring people with special needs and with all types of handicaps to the Fab Lab, and we work on solutions for them. So this could also be something for inclusive education. Um, basic, for example, one wheelchair driver, he had the problem when driving backwards. He always bumped into a wall because he couldn't move around and he couldn't see what was happening there. And within a day, we developed a small sensor system so that there would be a beep when there is some kind of barrier in the back of him. So that was also just a quick solution um, which you can use for educational purposes. And well, when you bring people there, they develop ideas, and we can develop that together with teachers, with pupils, actually with society. It's amazing.
That's very inspiring. Thank you. Do you have any questions for Jan? I think that we are coming to a very long webinar once again. When we started this series, we said that we wanted to do 15 minutes time, but it never quite manages to happen in 15 minutes um, because there is a lot of interesting things to talk about, of course. Um, so you can, no questions, okay. So, thank you, everybody, for attending today, and thank you, Jan, for an interesting chat. We will, of course, report the progress of computational thinking and acting also to LEA members. So don't worry, this is not the last that you hear from this. So let's continue
Yeah,
to
thank you
collaborate.
for giving the talk, and let's see what kind of collaborations we can do. And if there are somewhere a couple of 100,000 euros which I could invest in the real life, just let me know. You got my email address. I'll be happy to spend it. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Uh, I think you can share your email address into the chat box if you like. At this point, we can put it to the show notes. There will be a YouTube video made. We had a slightly different concept this time because Jan was confident that the technology will work. I haven't always been so confident because Adobe Connect has on occasion not let people in and there has been some problems. So usually we tape the expert interviews in before it actually happens, but it's been nice talking to you in real time now, so more interaction. Okay, thank you everybody, and I'll see you in the next webinar. We don't have a time yet for that, but it will come to our website, and also we'll share it on our social media. So have a good day.